This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
My guest today is once again Andrea Nicholson. She is a Board Certified Holistic Nutritionist. She was back with us on episode 91. If you want to listen to her teach on this topic, improve your gut health. She talks about that on our episode number 91, the steps to improve your gut health. So go check that out. She's back today. She's talking about 3 systems that she helps her clients to optimize day in and day out. It's the 3 systems that she's working on. Can you guess what they are? If I had to guess, I would have had no idea. But I recently saw her post on her Instagram account about these 3 systems and reached out to her and just said, hey, can you come on the podcast and dig into these a little bit for us? So that is exactly what we did. Here's my interview with Andrea Nicholson.
3 systems that I focus on in my practice are digestion, and then metabolic health, and then functional health. So within the first phase, obviously gut health is everything. And if you truly don't have an adequate, healthy gut system, then you're not absorbing nutrients, you're not eliminating toxins, you're not being able to bring in those good building blocks that you need for hormones and enzymes and muscle and tissue and cells and brain function and just all the things that your body needs to work. And so that's why we start with gut health first. So even if you don't have any overt digestive symptoms, doesn't necessarily mean that your gut is actually operating properly. So we look at all of the other symptoms that you might be having. And if there's any kind of gut component, that's why we start there, because that truly is the foundation to all the other things.
Okay. Gotcha. So
then go ahead.
I would imagine that like everybody has stuff with gut things that cleaning up that needs to be done. I'm reading a book now. I can't even think of the exact title. It's like maybe the brain gut connection or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so right now it's kind of my obsession learning about it. But the more you learn, like you said, it's like, it's everything is going to be connected to that.
It really is. And no matter what you're dealing with, there's probably going to be a gut health component. The research has shown pretty much across the board, everything that's non-communicable, so not contagious, all of the other chronic illnesses and joint pains and headaches and just all the other things that we deal with have a gut health component. And then, of course, the contagious stuff also does, because so much of what we get exposed to comes in through our GI system. Of course, we also get respiratory things, but a lot of it, if you have adequate gut health, that's also where your immune system lives. So you can fight those infections that you pick up from other people, from the contagions out there. You also fight them better with better gut health. So It really is foundational to everything.
Yeah. I think, I know we're going to get onto the other systems, but I think for me, the big learning point was the influence of the gut on mental health, on our emotional health, right? So there's a huge connection between what's going on down there and what's going on up here. And there really isn't a down there and up here as far as we're learning now, right? It's just all connected so well together.
It is, yeah. And the research has shown a lot of that for a long time. They've called the gut the second brain for a long time for that reason. There's a reason why we think when you're nervous, you have, butterflies in your stomach. Well, that's a mental thing, but you feel it in your stomach. Or you have a gut instinct. There's a reason why we have these phrases, and it's because we've known for a long time that the gut and the brain really are intimately connected. But some of the newer research is even showing that like serious mental health disorders are directly related to not only gut health, but metabolic health, which is why that's my second phase.
Yeah, let's talk
Because
about it.
yeah, if you have, serious mental health issues, whether it's, schizophrenia, that level, bipolar, some of the research is really showing that there's huge connections between your gut microbiome and blood sugar and insulin resistance directly tied to those metabolic issues. And
Okay.
so it can show up as bipolar or as schizophrenia, or it could show up as IBS or IBD. It can show up in lots of different ways across the entire body. And so that's why we start with those, because they really are everything.
Yeah.
And so we really need to get those in line.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the metabolic system? Because I feel like for most people, I mean, I don't want to sound, I don't want this to sound condescending. Because I think for myself as well, without being somebody who's into learning about health, that I would start to probably connect digestion to met metabolic health, because we talk all the time about nutrition and, oh, my metabolism's slow or whatever. And I think in most people's minds those are kind of the same. So but they're very different. So we have gut health, we have digestive health, and now metabolic health. So what is it?
Yeah. Yeah. They are for sure connected, and they do require optimization on both sides because there are differences and there's huge overlaps. So
Okay.
with digestive health, that's going to literally talk about how food goes through, the nutrients that we get from our food, the breakdown process, and also the waste elimination. So it's the entire process is digestion. Metabolic health has a lot to do with, now that you've absorbed those nutrients, can you use them? Where do they go? How do they get used? Do you have adequate amounts? Are they being used appropriately? If your cell receptors are gunked up with either really high blood sugars or high inflammation or toxins, or they've been made of the wrong fats because you've been eating a poor diet for a long time, now your cell receptors don't work very well and you can't adequately utilize those nutrients, or you can't adequately bring in those fuels to turn them into cellular energy. We don't just eat and boom, get energy. The body has all these chemical reactions that have to occur. And if you can't adequately absorb those nutrients because you have gut health issues, you can't use those nutrients for anything. You can't use that fuel for anything. And then if you do absorb it, but you can't get it into the cell where it's actually useful, it's still not doing you any good. And so there's all of these little places along the way that can get messed up. And if any of those things are messed up, metabolic health gets messed up. And then on the back end, the back end of metabolic health is there's always going to be waste products associated with every chemical reaction. There's going to be pieces that get broken off and then we don't use them. There's going to be toxins or like old hormones, old things that now need to be recycled or eliminated. If you can't get rid of those things, that also piles up and interferes with other cell processes. So it's not just what we bring in, but it's also being able to get rid of the things and make sure that all of the systems and functions are occurring correctly throughout the entire process.
Gotcha. Okay. And functional. That's the third system. And wherever I end up editing this, we might have already touched on it. We might have talked about it before we started the recording. But help us with that. How do you classify that, or what goes into that category?
Yeah, for me, everything that falls into then the functional health piece is kind of all the other things and keeping the results that you've gotten. So we know from decades of research, and much like in the world of fitness, that if you're physically strong and capable, you're far less likely to decline in health. And so within this phase, we're going to really dial in workouts. Are you strength training? Are you getting that really good resistance training that's not only building muscle, but keeping it? Because as we age, we naturally lose more and more muscle, but we don't have to, or we don't have to lose it at that same pace. So we have to combat those things, but with working out appropriately. That also involves obviously the nutrition piece. We have to make sure that you're eating adequately to support all of those tissues. but we really want to maintain your body's function. So we want to keep the results that we've gotten with your gut health. We don't want to backslide into infections and dysfunction in your gut. And we want to keep the metabolic systems working well. We don't want to backslide with blood sugar issues and toxin buildup and, inability to generate energy properly. So we want to keep all of those things by working on fitness, really dialing in awesome sleep, managing stress and building stress resiliency, and just kind of all of those other pieces that apply to a truly functional life. So you can stay physically and mentally capable so that you can, live with vitality throughout your whole life and keep those great results that you've already gotten.
Nice. Awesome. So earlier we talked too about is there 3 steps in each of the 3 phases? Could we,
Yeah.
you mind going back through and talking
Yeah.
about those?
Yeah. My 3 steps within this whole process is my functional health investigation process is investigate it. So in that first phase, we're really figuring out what's going on with you. How did you get to where you are? Where exactly are you right now? And where is it you want to go? So we're talking, gathering data from just conversations and how you feel and kind of your subjective view of your current status. We're also doing some functional assessments. So these are questionnaires and quizzes and those kinds of things that can help elicit even more detail, maybe things that you wouldn't have otherwise thought to even mention. Okay. This can elicit some of those, symptoms and history things, and just kind of a good refresher. And then we also use some lab testing. And so through all of this stuff, we're going to gather all of this data that's going to fund the investigation. Once we've gathered all the data, then we move into the solve it phase. So this is where now we know what's going on with you. We know what imbalances you have. We know what your goals are, where you're headed. We know why you are where you are. Do you have underlying infections? Do you have blood sugar issues? Do you have nutrient deficiencies? Do you have a toxin buildup? Do you have something in your environment that's contributing to your current status? What is that? We've done that in the investigation phase. Now we're going to address those things. So we're going to solve the problem. Once we've solved it and you're feeling really good, we move into the live it phase, which is where we start to incorporate all of those other lifestyle factors, building habits and rituals and routines and cleaning up the environment and doing all the things to make sure that you get to keep those amazing results and you have confidence in all of your decisions. So you know exactly what foods are best for you. You know what eating schedule is best for you. You know about proper eating habits. You know about exercise and sleep and stress and hydration and electrolytes and all the things. And so you have a sustainable plan that keeps you going.
Nice. So investigate it, solve it,
live it. Yep.
Got it. I should have been taking notes. I'm just trying to, I'm listening. I'm like, wow, awesome. So, I was going to say, which of the phases do you feel like most people need the most desperately in your work?
Of the 3 steps, I think the investigate phase is actually one of the most important steps because I think there's so many things that we just don't know. And you won't necessarily know if you're going by symptoms alone. Like we talked about a little bit with the gut health piece, you can have a seriously messed up gut without having any overt digestive symptoms. So you might not be constipated or have diarrhea or bloating or gas or heartburn. You might not have any of that. But you might have really bad joint pain, or you might have really bad headaches that are actually stemming from a gut issue. And so I think if you went by symptoms alone, you'd be trying to solve the headache or the joint pain. I mean, you wouldn't really know where to go other than maybe take an anti-inflammatory or take a, ibuprofen. You wouldn't necessarily know why do you have this issue. Mm-hmm. And so I think that investigation phase is really enlightening because it tells you why. It tells you what's going on. Are you lacking something? Do you have too much of something? Do you have an infection? Are you not digesting your food well? Are you actually eliminating whole food because you're not even breaking it down properly? All of these little pieces are going to really tell us exactly what's going on with you. Now, of course, you can go nuts with this and you can go way too far and you can do, tens of thousands of dollars in tests and all the scans and all the technologies and all the things and just overwhelm yourself with data that then ends up not really being very helpful. Mm-hmm. So I do think you have to be strategic about this. So utilizing, the right tests based on what your goals are and what your current status is. and really picking and choosing the things that are going to get you the answers that you're looking for. I mean, you can go wild with this stuff. And I don't think that's necessary. I think you can get away with a lot of times just one test can tell you a lot.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's two. It just depends on really what we're dealing with.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm curious to know, just maybe off the top of your head, like what are some of the surprise results? Though, I mean, you kind of mentioned like a lot of times there might be something that's not working well, but it's not really showing up in symptoms yet. What are some of the things that come up as you're working with your clients where they're like surprises, like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that wasn't
Yeah.
working.
Two of the most common that I see that people, there literally are no symptoms, are elevated blood sugars and liver imbalances.
Okay.
These are two that don't have any overt symptoms until things get really bad down the road. And, then you have overt disease. We're not looking for disease here. We're looking for imbalances. We're looking for things that are preventing you from living your best life and feeling your best. And a lot of times when I run the comprehensive blood chemistry panel, those are two areas that are really out of whack and people have no idea. They might be a healthy weight. They might not have any family history of diabetes. They might not have anything that would indicate from a symptom standpoint that they have blood sugar imbalances or that their liver is not really working that well. But when you have more training and more understanding of these things, you know from like the schooling I've gone through and the clients I've worked with, these can show up in lots of different ways. So you might have elevated blood sugars that are contributing to being tired after you eat or getting hangry if you don't eat often enough. And you might have liver issues if you have skin problems or if you have headaches or maybe you do have some digestive dysfunctions, but it's actually a liver issue. So I think there's lots of these body systems that don't translate to direct symptoms, but are leading to disease if they're not caught early enough. So that's the other reason why I would say, the investigative phase really is that important, because we can catch stuff early before your doctor wants to label you with some condition or some diabetes diagnosis or, whatever the diagnosis may be. Let's try to catch it before you actually get to that level. Let's catch it when it's just an imbalance. It's
Gotcha.
much easier to reverse then.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. No, that is interesting. Blood sugar elevated, maybe I would have guessed, but liver, just signs that the liver's struggling. I don't think that I would have maybe, even guessed that. So,
And those often go together, because when you have elevated blood sugar, you have elevated insulin. Insulin is a fat storage and production hormone. And when the body is overwhelmed with sugar, it's going to convert all of that to fat. And it does that conversion mostly in the liver. And a lot of that fat then stays in the liver. And then you get fatty liver. And so a lot of times those two are hand in hand. You have liver imbalances because you have blood sugar issues. But if you didn't know you had blood sugar issues, you wouldn't even have known to look at the liver. And so
right.
a lot of times they go together.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. Cool. What's the best way for a listener to get in touch with you, Andrea?
Yeah, the best way is just on my website, healthylifewithandrea.com. From there, you can read more about what I do, listen to my podcast, schedule a free call with me, find out more about me.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Andrea Nicholson, thanks so much for being here again on the Begin
Absolutely.
Within Health show.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank Andrea once again for being here on the show. The link is in the show notes as always for you to connect with her, schedule a call, listen to her podcast, all starting out from her website. That link is waiting for you in the show notes, as well as some other resources that we at Begin Within have prepared for you. But two things I wanted to just touch on before I let you go. Just my thoughts after that interview. Number one, the importance of gut health. Andrea said gut health is everything. And like I said, I'm reading a book right now on it. So that's where my brain has been focusing lately. But so important. And it's something that years back we didn't hear a lot when we were talking about our health and wellness. And that's very unfortunate because research has been showing that it does indeed affect everything. Surprise, surprise. And rather than taking sort of all of our body parts, right, and these different systems and breaking them apart and just trying to optimize one after another, like Andrea said, they're all very connected. And I think in the area of gut research, that is what is being highlighted over and over again, is how connected the gut is to our overall well-being, including our mental and emotional health. And of course, one of the big ways that we can have an impact on our gut health is by the foods that we are eating. And that's why it can be such a challenge to work on it. But that's why also it can be a process that is possible, right? Improving our gut health is so possible because a major factor in its health is the foods that it's processing, the foods that it's digesting for us. So that really is a huge component. That nutritional piece is huge. So gut health, so important. Do some digging, do some learning. You're going to hear that, and you have heard it here on this podcast over and over again, how important gut health is. So pay close attention to what you learn about it and implement it so that you can optimize your overall health. And the second thing that I want to touch on, I think, at least for me, was a little bit more of a revelation, more of an epiphany that I had after the conversation with Andrea. And that is the idea of underlying problems before symptoms. Symptoms are the result of months and years, oftentimes, of a problem that could have been corrected a long time ago. So, number one, what I took away from that piece of our conversation was that if there are symptoms of any kind, then there is definitely something worth looking into. And I know you, as a listener here, are someone who's very concerned about your health and always checking in on how well you're doing. But if you've got some symptoms, you're just not feeling yourself, there is pain, discomfort, it's a sign that there's something going on. Generally, right? I'm speaking very generally. And so don't just treat the symptom, but do some work at figuring out maybe what was going on for all this time that now is finally beginning to surface. And of course, along with that is the concept of taking our health very seriously now. Whatever age we are, whatever level our health is at, taking it very seriously now so that the future can be better for us in terms of our health, so that we can be the healthiest version of ourselves down the line, because the choices that we make now are definitely going to have an impact on us. Just like they say, the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best day is now. Well, the best time to start, focusing on your gut health, your metabolic health, your functional health maybe it was 20 years ago, but the second best day is today. It's now. Take action. Keep moving forward. Don't just come here and listen. Come here and act. Do something. Do something differently. Move in a healthier direction for yourself now and in the future. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today on the Begin Within Health Show. If you would be so kind as to rate and review the show in your podcast player, it would mean so much to me. And like I mentioned, you can go back to episode 91 if you're looking for the next place to turn after you finish this episode. Check out my interview with Andrea Nicholson there on episode 91. Thanks again, and I'll talk with you again soon here on the Begin Within Health Show.